So, it's the new year, and I know a lot of guys are probably going to have it on their bucket list this year. This is the year I buy a truck. One of the questions I see asked all the time online, and asked in general, is when is it the right time to buy a truck? I'm going to tell you right now, there is no right time to buy a truck. There's a lot of factors you have to consider, but, but it doesn't mean it's the wrong time. That's kind of what I'm getting at. There is a wrong time, like if you're 25,000 in deep, have 5 kids, and you can barely pay the rent, buying a truck is probably not the best course of action at this point. But, so when's it the right time? Well, the right time is when you're ready to buy a truck. There are a lot of things that you have to be willing to do, and have to be willing to sacrifice, and a lot of money you have to be willing to spend when you go on your truck shopping journey. Y'all saw what I did when I went to go visit, or when I went to go buy my latest truck. That was, I didn't even show you half of it. It was a mess. I mean, it was rough. But that being said, it took me about 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and I put about 3,000 miles on the car. There was a rental car involved, and several hundred in gasoline. And then, of course, I had all my regular living expenses on top of it because I wasn't working. So that's the start. Can you afford to absorb that? Now, I know a lot of guys would like to find trucks locally, and I hope you do. And I hope you can work it out. It's not going to be as dramatic as what I went through, hopefully. But it can be worse. I know guys that drove across the country to go look at a truck. I knew one guy that drove across the country, bought a truck. Turned out the truck ended up not being as desired and ended up having to take it back. It was that bad. You have to be willing to go put hands on it. So, when is it the right time? Well, let's start with just talking about money. Now, one of the things that you need to start doing is figure out what kind of truck you want and start watching the market. Now, you need to be doing this 6 months in advance. What kind of truck do I want? What am I doing? What's going to give me the best bang for my buck? For your first truck, it's nice to be brand loyal. We all have our druthers. But you're going to soon realize that for your first truck, you need to get what you can afford, not what you want. That can really bite people hard. So you start watching the market. Now, it hasn't really been a buyer's market in the last year or two, but it has been a seller's market because guys are getting desperate and they're overpaying for trucks and getting upside down. So this is where being patient comes in. Now, here's the thing. If you find a truck for, $15,000, $20,000, which you can do, sounds good. Is it DOT legal? How much money is it going to take to get the truck DOT legal? Because if you buy a $15,000, $20,000 truck, then have to drop $15,000 to $20,000 into that truck, you're at $40,000, $45,000. For an extra $5,000, you could have bought a truck that was nice, a little newer, and ready to go. I saw some very nice Freightliners about that price between $45,000, $50,000. Now, don't get me wrong, they weren't ideal for what I was looking for, but they would get the job done. So that's something you have to consider. Now, the other thing you're going to need is your down payment. You're going to need between $5,000 and $10,000 to put down. Nobody is going to give you a no money down unless it's a lease purchase, and we've discussed those. A no money down kind of thing is always very high interest, and the payments are always usually really stupid. But if you can put $5,000 to $10,000 down, and 5 is usually the minimum. That's what usually what everybody wants is a minimum of 5 at this time. They can, you know, you can get in the truck a little bit. You don't have any equity at that point built up into it. And truthfully, you should never think about building equity in a truck. That's not a thing. Every mile you run on that truck, you run value out of it. Trucks just, they don't appreciate. Some of the older trucks hoods and stuff like that, but as a general rule, those guys are overpaying for worn out junk. They're going to stick another $100,000 into something that is only worth $40,000. But I digress. Trucks don't appreciate. You do not build equity in a semi truck. So let's just put that out on the table. Now, so you got $5,000 down. You've got approval for your loan. You're gonna, you know, $45,000, $50,000. Got good payments going on. That's not all. You're gonna need a little more money. I'm gonna tell you that you're gonna need an easy another $5,000. That's not even a joke. You're gonna need another $5,000 to sit on. So right now we're up to about 10 grand. Why the 5,000? Well, you're gonna need tags. You're going to need insurance if you get your own DOT numbers. But even if you're running somebody else, they're gonna want money for insurance. Now, a lot of guys will take it out of your pay and all that, which is nice, and set you up on a payment program for stuff like that. But you're still gonna need money for escrow, because you're gonna spend the next, several weeks sorting out all the little stuff that breaks on your truck. Just like I did with this new truck of mine, just like I did with the last several. Things are gonna break. So about the first 6 weeks to maybe 6 months, you're gonna be fixing coolant leaks. You might change a tire or two. You're just gonna be doing services and learning the truck. So that's why you're gonna need an extra 5 grand, because you're gonna need something to build on. So you got your 10 grand, you figured out, you got your truck, you've got everything figured out. Here's one thing guys don't tell you. Working on a 1099, and you are self-employed basically at this point. If you're leased to a company, or if you're by yourself, you're a sole proprietor, LLC, however you want to do. Now, as a single truck outfit, I know guys will argue with me about this. Do not waste your time with an LLC. It doesn't protect you like they say. All it does is create more paperwork. It puts a little bit of separation between the business and you, but in reality, if something was to happen and they were going to go after you, they would go after you. You are the business. That's something to think about. Now, if you had an employee or something like that, you hired people and this, that, and the other thing, absolutely. But basically, just filing as a sole proprietor, that's just kind of what you need to do. Now, if you have a family and all that, that's something you need to talk to your tax person about. You know, taxes are a very real thing. So you have to be willing to deal with taxes also. So you're going to need an accountant for sure. Part of the percentage that gets taken out of what I do with the company that I've leased my truck to is they do all the IFTA, they do all the permitting, they do all of that. Now I pay for some of it. Well, I pay for all of it really. But the percentage that's taken out is basically paying the office staff to do my paperwork. It's well worth it. Now, if I was to get my own authority and all that, I'd get another 5%. To me, that's not worth it. I know I would make a lot more money but the majority of that would all be eaten up with administrative costs. And another thing is, once you become a buy your truck, you're going to need insurance. The insurance market today has gone nuts. Because of the Affordable Care Act, I can no longer afford insurance. Thankfully, I get mine through the Veterans Administration. Well, they call it insurance. But insurance has skyrocketed. And if you're with a company, even if you have lousy insurance, but it's taking care of what needs to happen, and you've got kids and all that, I would tell you this, to very strongly consider what you're doing. Now, if you can make the money and afford it, to tell you how, with me personally, my insurance went from about $390 a month before the Affordable Care Act to about $400 to $500 a week. That's not a joke. Who can afford that? And if you have a family, for good insurance, you're going to pay that and more. So that's something to consider. Now, I know it's not something I'm really going to talk too much about. This is between you and your accountant, and between you and your family, and truthfully, that's my personal experience with it. So you're going to need that, but you're also going to have to start paying your taxes. Now, this being the first of the year, this is January 1st right now when I'm recording this. You're going to need to do all of your taxes. Taxes are a very serious thing, and it only usually takes 1 or 2 years for guys to realize how serious they are. I'll tell you this, and I know guys ignore me all the time when I say this. Get set up with your accountant to have it automatically deducted. Pay your quarterlies. Take about 9% out of every check you get and put it away for your taxes. That's a lot of money, but taxes are a lot of money. You know, you need to figure out that I'm going to pay probably $30,000 this year. It's not a joke. I'll pay somewhere around $30,000 in taxes this year. And that's after I do all the stuff. Now, I'll probably get a bit of that back. But you don't want to have to come up with that kind of money at the end of the year. What ends up happening is guys can't do it, so they don't do it. So they go 2 or 3 years without paying it, and next thing you know, they're in a lot of financial trouble. Set it up early. Take it out every week. Have a separate bank account. Have a separate checking account. You can't afford not to pay your taxes. I'm going to tell you this. Uncle Sam is a pimp. He doesn't care what your predicaments is. He wants his money. So always, always, always have your taxes set up before that. Other than taxes, this is the one thing that gets most guys in trouble. Their spouse. If you're going to buy a truck and you're considering it, and you got a wife and kids, or, you know, you got a family, whatever, you're a lady, got a husband and kids, you're going to need to sit down and have a very, very long talk and serious talk about what's happening, what's expected. Is this something we can do? You know, it's frightening. It is, you're working without a net. You're going to be enamored by the amount of money that you're making initially, but very quickly you're going to realize that that money's going to get eaten up very, very quickly with just the cost of doing business, the cost of living, the cost of all this. And so you need to have a talk with the closest people around you to find out, is this something you guys can financially afford? Because once you're locked in, you're working without a net. Now, I'm not talking about walk-away leases. I'll get to those here in a minute, as you probably expected I would. But you need to have a very serious talk about what to expect, what's going to happen. You can be optimistic, but you're going to have to take in consideration, if you're taking care of people, this might not be the best thing for you to do at this time. It might be, but you might also need to reevaluate where you're at. Now, realistically, I've seen more guys lose their marriages and lose their homes with walkaway leases. These guys get buried. They get broke. They lose their homes. They lose their wives. They lose everything. These guys are gone 320 days a year, 330 days a year, killing themselves while the company's just raping them. That's just, you know, I've talked about leases before. This is why I hate leases. If you can't afford to buy a truck, you can't afford a lease. It's been proven over and over and over again. You know, I watched guys with $700, $800, $900 a week lease payments when I went and bought my truck and was paying $325 a week. You can do it. You can do it. You know, but if you're going to be sitting there with a family and all that, like I said, reevaluate. Don't think that a walkaway lease is going to be a cakewalk, because we've talked about this before. They're going to have you set up an escrow account, and then they're going to prorate everything from the mileage to the brakes to the tires, and you may end up owing them money. So that's something else to think about. But an escrow account is not a bad thing. If the company that you lease to, or if you decide to do this on your own, it's a good idea to put $300 to $400 a week into an escrow account, into a maintenance fund. And I'll tell you right now, that maintenance fund has paid for a lot of stuff. You know, I used to do $200 a week. It seemed like it would never build, but for some reason, $300 a week builds fast. I've never figured it out, but it seems to work for me. So, $300 a week, and you know, what is that? 3, 6, 9. That's $1,200 a month. You know, that'll buy you a steer tire. If you end up not touching your maintenance account for a couple of months, you know, it starts being some real money. So set yourself up a maintenance account, and it'll cure what ails you in some form or another, because there's going to come a chance when you need money. One of the things that guys say all the time that I hear, well, is if it doesn't work out and I need to be home, I can just hire a guy to drive my truck. That is the worst thing ever. You'll go broke. You'll have a guy that'll trash your truck. You might lose a friendship out of it. And you're going to go broke 3 times as fast as you're going now. Very rarely does this ever work. It's just, you got to pay, you know, you've got to pay the guy out of what you're making. And it doesn't matter, because he gets paid off the top. At least I hope he gets paid off the top. But, yeah, that's a story for another day. But when you have to pay that, you can pay the driver. You can automatically assume that probably 30 to 35% of your net, not your gross, your net, is going to disappear, because you have to pay him out of what's left for every mile moved, or percentage or whatever. And you could probably figure 25 to 30%. Now, if you're paying in percentage, you're gonna have to pay him off the gross. Ain't nobody gonna work for net unless they're just mentally ill. But you're gonna realize that when that truck breaks, you're gonna have to fix it, and it's gonna have to come out of your net. If something happens and he can't stay in the truck and he needs a motel, that may be on you. Wherever he fuels up, your fuel mileage is going to drop, because, well, that's not his truck. You know, so there's a lot of things to consider. And truthfully, if you're already developing a plan B before you have bought the truck, you're not ready. If you've got a backup plan, you've already planned to fail. So there's no backup plan here. If you're going to do it, do it. And this is why I say, are you ready to buy a truck? Because when you go, you're going to have to go full bore. And it's going to suck for 6 months to a year. I guess my point is this. It's never the right time. You just have to be comfortable with where you're at with it. You know, is your situation optimal? Did you find a good deal on a truck? It's, you know, it's never going to be perfect. And if you expect it to be perfect and wait for that perfect moment, you're never going to buy. You have to be willing to jump in with both feet, assume the risk, and just grab the bull by the horns and go. And you have to be willing to work. One of the biggest mistakes that guys make when they go from being a company driver to an owner-operator is that they start thinking that they can just dictate whatever they want to do. That things are just going to flow. Things are going to be easy. The money's going to roll in and they can dictate and do whatever they want. You know, they're in control. They're in charge. No. You're going to work harder than you ever have. It's hard work. And the first year of truck ownership is going to suck because you're going to be sitting there figuring out what you need to do. And as soon as you get that figured out, everything's going to change. One of the things I did that was kind of a mistake when I bought my first truck was trying to figure it all out. I know a lot of people are going to laugh, that know me are going to laugh when they hear me say this, is that I'm a problem solver. I'm meticulous when it comes to certain things, and I'm a little bit OCD. Okay, you can stop laughing now. Anyhow, so for about 4 or 5 months before I bought the truck, I ran numbers. I watched fuel. I figured out how much everything was going to cost, what I was running, this, that, and the other thing. And then I jumped in with both feet. The problem was that I jumped in at the same company I was a company driver in. And it literally flip-flopped. They broke me. I was one breakdown from being completely out of business when I left. It was awful. They broke me, but it was almost like they intentionally broke me. Yeah. Anyhow, nothing was as it seemed. Every number I had been right had the customer actually lived up to their word. They did not. So I had to refigure everything, and eventually I just had to move on to a new job, which turned out well. It continues to turn out well all these years later. So you have to understand that trucking is a very fluid thing. It's constantly changing. You'll hear guys say, you know, we've been doing it this way since, pick an arbitrary date. Yeah, that's why you're failing. That's why you're not making money. That's why you keep coming up behind the 8 ball, because you're not willing to adapt and move. And being unwilling to adapt and move is where a lot of guys get in trouble. The first year, you're going to have to be willing to take a little less time off, as you did as a company driver. You're going to have to be willing to miss a couple birthdays, maybe an anniversary. You're going to have to be willing to put that job ahead until you can get it figured out, or until you can work yourself into a spot in the company where you're comfortable with what you're doing and you have your finances figured out. Your financial well-being is going to get flip-flopped. It's going to get thrown on its head. That's not a joke. I'm not joking when I say that. It's going to be crazy. It was for me. It's been for that way with everybody I know that's done it. So your expenses are going to double and change. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you're going to have to be willing to sacrifice a few things at least the first year until you figure out where you want to be and what you want to do. So that all has to figure in on, is this the right time to buy a truck? If you're in a financial crisis and you've got a credit score of 61, no. I would highly recommend it, because you have a lot deeper problems than, yeah. So just something to think about. Basically put, guys, do your homework. Set some goals. Save some money. If you really want to do this, and this is your first time, it's going to take you 6 months to a year to get the money saved up. Now, a buddy of mine, he found a deal, and then he went and got a signature loan and borrowed $500, so he took out 2 loans. Now, he did manage to get the other loan paid off rather quickly. The first loan, he had it paid off within a year. And you can do that. But what I'm saying is, it's going to take time to get to the point where you need to be comfortable with what you're doing. Like I said, it wasn't optimal. When I bought my first truck, it wasn't an optimal time. Everybody I know, when they bought their first trucks, it wasn't an optimal time. We had just come to the point where we realized that we were hitting our head on the ceiling. We capped out. We were going nowhere. So this was the next logical step for us. And this isn't for everybody. But if you're sitting there waiting for the right time, it'll never come. Things are never going to be perfect. Something's always going to be askew. So just, you don't have to get your ducks in a row, but at least get them into the pen, into some kind of order, and then go for it. It might take you 6 months to a year to get the money and get everything set up, but I guarantee you, once you get going, if you have a good handle on what you're doing, you're going to be glad you did. But if you sit there and wait and wait and wait and wait, you're just not going to make it. Just hard truth, guys. So be safe out here. That's about all I got on this video. I just was one of those questions I keep seeing all the time. When is it the right time to buy a truck? It's never the right time. But it's never the wrong time either. It's just time. And manage it properly, and you'll end up with something really cool. I hope. And if it's not really cool, maybe your next truck will be. I mean, this is a learning experience. We all grow. So, guys, good luck out there. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Be safe and Happy New Year.